Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we got a banger of a video coming out for you guys. I'm gonna be honest, we have like a lot of stuff going on in the game, and it's been pretty busy. You know, if you haven't been active into it, then what have you doing? What have you been up to? We have the Fabian Fusion currently active right now. You should be pretty much on the tail end of things. So the first week is kind of already come and gone, and we're kind of going into our second week. I would say just in terms of like if you want like a little general checkpoint of where we're at. I did get the Summon Rush Epic, so I have a little bit of like a gap and a little bit of filler to kind of work with. But I would say at the very least, you're roughly, if not already further progressed past that, 2 epics worth of the rares already ready to go for crafting purposes, maybe even closer towards the 3rd. I think as of right now, I have about 9. One of them is kind of currently unfinished, but that basically means I have at least 2. So 2 and an extra leaving over for in terms of epics. With that epic, it'll put me at 3. I do believe I still have a couple of things I need to do, which will be, I think I'm not done with the spider, so that's 1 additional. That'll put me at 2 out of 4. And then I think I have a little bit more to do with champ training, which will put me at 3 out of 4. And then I got 1 more event tournament that I need to participate in, which will come eventually after, some time goes by, and we'll pretty much be in a good spot from there. Anyways, with that being said, we have the Fusion, Fusion currently locked and loaded. We're kind of on our way. We're making really good progress there. But I did want to kind of talk about some other stuff that's kind of currently ongoing. And we are going to break it down. You saw a little bit earlier. I'm going to kind of talk about the last 2 big events that kind of just popped up, which is going to be the Verdant Deck of Fate. Now, we do know about the new champion, Khan Branchbreaker. He is a defense void nuker, I believe. He's pretty interesting. I mean, he has an A1 that has a block revive in there. And then also he has a attack all enemy with ignore percent in between. Also destroys max HP. And then, of course, he has this potential of being able to provide like a shield with strengthen, counterattack on him. The versatility of it, from what I watched, and the only sample size I got from seeing him in action was via one of my clanmates, Scratch. I'll post this video in the comments for you guys to be able to see it for reference. I think it was a really good demonstration to kind of showcase some of the potential this champion has. He's a decent nuker. Straight up, that's the best way to say it. He's a decent nuker. Other than that, though, it's kind of like he really is just there for damage overall. I will say that there is some good matchups that he could potentially be very valuable in. And I'll give an example. A champion likes to pop up all the time that his block revive could be very valuable against would be someone like maybe the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. You know, he likes to pop up with his passive quite often. And being able to kill him and keep him down would be really, really cool. It is off the A1, which normally doesn't have like the craziest amount of multipliers. But that could be something that you would have to watch out for and look and seize the opportunity. Thankfully, he's a pretty squishy champion by nature, so it is pretty easy to kill him and then keep him down, hopefully. Maybe with like an ally attacker. I know like Queen of Hearts has been pretty active a lot lately, so there could be some value there. Along with the fact that he does do ignore percent with AoEs. Basically, the difference is if they have any shields on them, so it's a little bit conditional there, so you have to watch out a little bit. Same thing with shield effects being ignored. It's a little bit there. He's kind of got some shield interaction that you got to watch out for. He also does increase defense after every 4th turn, which can be kind of nice. It can be kind of nice, but I do feel like if he was going to do like a big nuke, it'd be nice to get it like maybe like a Laz, where a Laz's kit, I believe, he does it just before he does his big nuke, right? So the A2, increase defense, and then he hits, right? And then all the extra stuff comes around. So it's like it sets up itself, so you can basically mix him in with a bunch of different champions, different boosters, and you get what you're looking for, right? Now, with all that being said, is he worth going for? I think the answer is you don't have to get him, but it wouldn't be bad to have him if you do have him. So this is the kind of cool thing about this particular event. Not only is pulling the cards and getting the same quality or quantity or rank 3 times in a row gives you various additional miscellaneous rewards on top of that. But what I think that's kind of valuable about this particular Deck of Fate is that all 3 different ways that you can acquire resources for are pretty cool. So artifacts and accessories, you can go farm dungeons. You get a little bit of points to help you pull a couple of the cards. Summoning champions with shards. You can also pull some shards, and next thing you know, you get some points along the way. Summon soul stones. You can pull some soul stones, get some blessings, and get some points along the way. So there's some different ways you can approach it. Now, with that being said, we have this for about 3 days and counting as of the time of this recording. Is there any big progressives that are going to be up and running that I think are worthwhile to go for? I think the answer is no. This one's pretty lackluster since it is St. Patty's Day. A lot of people are kind of doing their own little rendition of, basically, cloverleaf themed kind of. You kind of see the aesthetic, right? Which is, it's cool. It's nothing crazy, but it is something that you could dabble in if you wanted to. But none of these champions are really overly desirable. You got Pydrag, who's an ally tech right now. If you don't have one of him, he's probably the best of the bunch. And then Nari's not all that great. I honestly think that they need to rework that champion. Same thing maybe with Shamrock. Shamrock does have a little bit of accuracy and some play in there, but nothing crazy. Cillian, you do have him for empowerment for Ronda, although Ronda has been kind of out of the meta. But also I'd say he's pretty valuable for one particular stage in Sin City. But if you don't need him for that one stage, his value goes down tremendously. So kind of a little underwhelming for a champion pool. But I think that's okay because we have other stuff that's active right now that may be more worthwhile our point. So, Deck of Fate is currently active. We have, the currently active Progressive, which is, it's a little mediocre, I'll be honest with you, from my taste at least. But this right here is where I'll say we kind of have a little bit of an eyebrow raise in terms of what is coming out. They have the Anniversary Summon Pool Prism event. I have immediately kind of, I kind of had a feeling. They didn't do Gina in the Dwarf Fusion event, and I was like, why? Why? And I gave my criticism, I'll be honest with you, but I had a feeling that this particular Prism event, if it was going to be anniversary themed or whatever the case may be, they may be throwing a lot of desirable champions, and lo and behold, here we are. We have Stultus, great for Dragon Hard 10 and Dragon Content in general, a great defensive nuker who's also Force Affinity. We have First Axe Tuskor, which I think he's kind of like the new red herring in this particular lineup. It's an Ogryn attack type champion that hits 2 times with an extra turn chance on his A1 by 25%. And then he also has a chance to increase his damage by 10% for each buff on him. And then decrease the cooldown of the skill if it kills an enemy. And it attacks 2 more enemies and grants the champion an extra turn and stand. And so, if it kills multiple people, he gets an extra turn. If it kills one, it gets a cooldown on this particular ability, which is already on a 3-turn cooldown when you're fully booked. The A3 gives increased attack, increased crit damage, which is a great setup going into his damage. And then he hits the enemy 2 times, which will also ignore shields, and if it kills them, grants an extra turn. So, this guy can cycle if you're not careful, right? He looks pretty cool too, I'll be honest with you. And then, of course, his passive is going to be extra turns. This champion increases their crit damage by 50%. That seems to be a permanent stack. Each extra turn, this champion also decreases the damage they receive by 5. So he gets a built-in mitigation, and he also gets built-in damage scaling, which is kind of nice depending on where you're using him. Now, I do want to show you guys at his level 60 range what he looks like stat-wise. He does have okay HP. Defense is all right. Speed's a little bit on the lackluster side. And, of course, the attack is decent. 1,400. 1476 is about roughly in the middle of the pack. I think as you start getting towards 1,500 and 1,600 is when you start seeing the top of the line. And I want to say the top dog right now would probably be, in terms of just raw stats, maybe around the lines of someone like Carnage, who has like 1,900 in his second form. So you can kind of get a little bit idea. He's not crazy in terms of base stat-wise, but that extra turn could be really, really valuable if you're able to get him off the ground. So something to watch out for. He's also Force Affinity, which is kind of unique. I feel like I'm lacking in Force champions in general, which is kind of interesting. And this entire top row gives it to you. So, speaking of which, we have UDK, the Wall himself, basically. I don't think we really need to describe him too much. There's been plenty of content about where he's super valuable. Increase on the continuous heals, continuous heals he gives to everybody. A shield, which is pretty hefty based off of his defense, which he's also defense scaling. AoE decreased attack and fear, which has a crazy high chance on legendaries. Of course, a provoke on the A1, and he has a built-in damage scale increase whenever someone is dead. And then, of course, he also mitigates the first single target hit that goes to someone, it will go to him instead, which is basically the long and short of it. Really, really strong champion. Harma, your defense nuker, demon hunter, and pretty much a good bulk down, like, what do you call it? Bolster, Hulk, hunker down type strategy for a Go Second style team. She's a great staple in that because of her passive, and she scales off a defense, which also automatically makes her intrinsically tanky. Not bad. We also have Wallmaster Arthurion, who is your AoE block buff champion with enemy max HP. Gives himself extra turns along with a buff setup. Makes him very valuable for like Hydra content, maybe even for any max HP boss clearing content. If you're trying to do quick burst, he can do maybe a two 10%ers or something around those lines. So pretty valuable. Hansel, a little bit underwhelming as a champion when partnered with Gretel. There is a little bit of a decent combination there, but a little lackluster overall as your go-to nuker. Could be useful for some Sin City stages, or if you don't have a faction war champion for damage, he's great along with Hansel and Gretel, in Sacred Order. Really good there, but not the most desirable, I would say, out of this bunch. Armand's though, yeah, he's still meta. He still hasn't left his position as a very formidable opponent or champion to have on your side, or great for arena. AoE stun after removing or stealing their turn meter. Poly for 1 turn, and then a buff strip on top of that. Really strong for the team. Yeah, he's pretty much, if you're not picking him, you're almost banning him. That still holds up true. He's a little bit more easier to account for nowadays, but still a very problematic champion if he starts getting his turns. Noct, the Paralyzer, not really overly exciting. He does have a passive that has a sleep, ally protection with continuous heals, and some sleep poisons, which could be useful if you're using him in a place that could be useful. I think he also has a lot of HP on him in his final form. I think he does give HP in dungeons, which is kind of nice. It's okay, but nothing crazy about Noct. I don't think we really too much worry about him. And Korra, on the other hand, though, a great support champion, pretty much protects your highest crit damage champion and removes any of the hard CC debuffs that goes on him and places on her instead. She has a cleanse that also complements that with a shield and strengthen and turn meter boost, a full cooldown revive in terms of your abilities with 50% HP and some turn meter. With Narcisse, it's even better. And then, of course, her A1 has a chance to decrease cooldown. It's a randomized chance, but it's like about 50-50 with and Narcisse. It kind of happens a little bit more succinctly for him when that does. It's not randomized, but it is given to him instead, and then to an enemy or an ally afterwards. And then, of course, if the cooldowns are on that champion are fully reset, it heals instead. So you got some little value there. A really strong champion. She's still relevant, in my opinion. I think she's a great partner champion to Narcisse, and I think Narcisse and her are still pretty solid. Then you have Elva. I got video footage coming out soon for her in relation to some team comps that I use with her, in particularly Chimera. And I think that she kind of went from being like maybe a high resistance champion to maybe be a go second strategy for cleansing to not really being used too much outside of a tanky support champion to maybe clan boss every now and then, to now she has her spot in Chimera. If you don't have a Galathier, she's basically your next best chance. She gives you a lot of value, not only within the comp itself for trials, but she's a great support champion to keep the ball going. So, great champion, worthwhile to have at least one of if you don't do it. Cleanse, block debuff, increase attack and defense when you revive, and of course, a spammable A1 that gives you continuous heals no matter what. Really good. A little tip I would give you guys too, if you ever use a Elva in Chimera, her A1, if your entire team is fully healed, it's going to go to the lead role champion. So whoever you're using for your aura in that team comp, it's going to go there a lot. I thought that was pretty fun to kind of realize and kind of, get in tune with. Necmo, another champion I'm also going to be using in the future for him, is a great champion for Chimera as well. He had his place, and he still kind of sometimes has his place in Hydra, where I feel like he does very well. But as you go over time, he does consume a lot of extra turns with his A3, which is, it's okay. Over time, though, you're going to look to kind of limit the amount of turns you're consuming in terms of quantity, and you're going to try to go for more quality in terms of turns for Hydra. And that's where he kind of fell off a little bit from my comps, and I end up going towards more quality-centric champions that gives me more value over time. But this champion's still solid. I mean, AoE decrease attack, AoE decrease speed and leech, and then a turn meter boost, and then he has a turn meter boost on top of that whenever a debuff is removed from an enemy, and then of course an aura that gives you 19% speed. Very solid champion, really good stats, even when he's fully awake and ascended, really solid. Now, Tony the Tiger. Ragash, he is a long lost love of mine. I think he's okay. With Pinpoint, you can maybe use him a little bit more now because you're less likely to get prone for CC, turning into poly for you. But I will say that the fact that his A1 is what you need to do preemptively to get that increased defense on his own, or have a defense boosting champion elsewhere, like maybe a Sippy on the side, he kind of needs a little bit of love to kind of get him going, similar to like Harma. I used to love Ragash into Harma, but the meta has kind of shifted a little bit more where you need a little bit more from your champions, not only for them to do damage and control, but maybe buff strips is a little bit more important, which is where Marius kind of shines in the same faction that this Ragash is. But still a solid defensive nuker, great for a lot of content. And I think he's solid. He's solid. Maybe not as useful as he used to be, but I think he's still pretty good nevertheless. Our boy Bells. Bells is interesting because he's an HP champion that brings, I believe, Leech and Block Buzz. Great for Hydra content. Okay damage, I would say. Nothing too overly crazy to write home about. He does have a little bit of scaling inside his kit, not fully boosted out of the crazy wazoo like some of our more damage scaling based champions. Think Harma, think Toshiro, who's really known for that. But he has a little bit that's going for him, which is not too bad. I think he's a solid champion if you're looking for that. You could also maybe use him in areas where stealing busts could be useful, as well as repeatable attacks if you're looking to do like big AoE burst damage. I think that could be pretty valuable on his A3. So not too bad. He does have an accuracy aura. Decent, not overly crazy. Duchess. Now, PvE content-wise, I think she's still very solid. Her passive is unfathomably very strong, very potent, really good for progression-type champions or accounts. The Veil, the increased attack is still good. The Revive is solid for AoE reviving, but I will say that not getting any turn meter boost is what kind of puts her a little bit down the barrel a little bit. She is replaced by Galathir subsequently as a champion that just does something a little bit more. And her survivability is very nuanced there. She doesn't have a passive that prevents fatal hits like Galathir does too as well. Now, with that being said, though, to flip it over for maybe you Siege connoisseurs, getting champions like Lammasu or maybe even Commodus or Carnage allows her to kind of be a staple amongst that to kind of help support and keep the team going. So I think she's a very solid champion, a very cool contribution towards the Demon Spawn. She's probably the best support in there, bar none. And then, of course, our last but most enticing of this bunch, I would say, is the Nut himself. G-Nut Gnut. I think we kind of talked about it quite a bit, but AoE decrease attack and weaken. A1 that prices fears or drops turn meter depending on what you're using against. The A3, which is an enemy max HP hit times 3. And also reduces the defense of the target, making it easier to hit that cap. And then, of course, counterattacking, he deals 100% of his damage instead of 75. This is your boss killer. If you don't have one, you want one. If you have one, you want two. And some people, even if you have two, you want three. So he is a great champion for brute forcing. If you've seen any of my dungeon teams, I have a couple of them. Sometimes 3 of them, sometimes 4 of them. You never know. But he's a great champion to use and lace in between. So is this particular summoning pool Prism event worth it? I think the answer is it depends. From an early game perspective, every single one of these champions has something to give you. Even, I would say, Hansel in terms of that. You don't really have much for options, so it's obviously going to be very valuable for you. The mid game, your account should start seeing some life. You should start seeing some breath. But I would still say this is a great pool to pull from because these champions are not only legendaries, but they're quality legendaries, you know? As for the late game and end game, it starts to get a little bit more spicier. It starts to get a little bit more specific where you're looking for key champions now instead of just any champions, right? And the end game, I would say overall, unless you're going for specific targets, like for example, empowerment for Armands or UDK or your PvP champions, or if you're looking to fill in faction guardians, I did a look at this pretty quickly and it looks like you get one of every faction. It looks like we got Bannerlords, we got High Elves, we got Barbarians. Let's see, do we have one for Dark Elves? We have one for Dark Elves with Noct. Skinwalkers, Undead, Shadowkin. Yeah, you pretty much get one of every set there. We even have Sacred Order there too as well. Yeah, so you kind of see it. You have one for every fusion. So if you're just looking to fill in Faction Guardians just to fill it in, I would normally recommend that if you're trying to target a specific faction, you would wait for that Faction Unity Champion event to come in. Like, for example, I'm waiting for Shadowkin. More than likely, after this Anniversary Summoning Pool event, we either will get something that's also Anniversary again, or it's going to shift back over to the Prism event for Shadowgun specifically, since the Unity Champion just got released. So I will wait for that instead of dipping my toe in here praying that I get a bunch of Harmas, right? Now, with that being said, if I want a bunch of Harmas, this would be a good chance to try to shoot your shot for. Same thing with Armands, same thing with UDK, which are a couple I like to look at. Maybe Elva and Korra, just to name a few. They're all pretty valuable if you use them for high-end PvP. they're pretty good to like get empowerment towards, you know, so it'll definitely help. Now, my rule of thumb is that Faction Guardians first, empowerment comes later. But that's just me. You do what you want with your account. And with that being said, I want you guys to tell me, are you guys going to go for this particular Prism event? If so, did you get good drops? If not, I'm sorry to hear that. Also, I didn't say this, but this is also your mythical in disguise. If you paid attention to your epic pool here, Lady Quillen, I want to say it's Illusinia, Isbel, and Dahlia. Let's see what else we got. Aishma, Eofrig, I believe. Elijah might have been one, I'm not entirely sure, but like going down this list, even Inda, all those champions are epics that are associated to the fusion for the one-time fusion for Mikage. So if you don't have Mikage, this is a great opportunity to try to snag a couple of these epics that will help you push that envelope a little bit more. And then on top of that too, the little bits that are laced in between, like Aox, what is that, Doom Priest, Venomage, Ugo, Taguar. We all love Taguar. These are all really good epics that also carry the game too pretty well. I mean, you got Deacon, Vogoth, Magnar, Myceliac, Priesthorn. These are all great epics that are also pretty solid. So I give this roughly as a Prism event by itself across the board for all different types of progression of the game. I'd give it about like a B, almost maybe to a solid A. It's a pretty good one, I think a B is probably pretty realistic. There may have been one or two champions I would maybe take out and plug in for. That'd be nice. But I would go for the OP stuff, so obviously I think that they're trying to, you know, keep it a little bit modest in the pool size since they're giving us a pretty decent one in general. So, you know, out of the big ones, I would go for Armands for +3/+4. Harma would be great for an extra dupe for Faction Guardians, and then maybe Empowerment down the road. UDK, I believe my Faction Guardians is already filled, and if I were to go for another UDK, it would be for the sole fact of Empowerment, which I have one already at +2, +3. So for me, I would want to get, I'd want to get him for a +4 if I did it, just to finish it out. But that's pretty much it. That's where I'm at. I mean, Elva would be nice for more like Faction Guardians. It would just be for me, it would be Faction Guardians and Empowerment at this point because I have most of these champions, if not majority of them. The only ones I'm not having right now is, I think I have a Bells. I just haven't built them. I don't have a Noct. I don't want a Noct, so I'm okay with that. I have a Hansel, not built, and all the rest of them are built except for Tuskor. Tuskor is the only one I don't have legitimately besides Noct, and both of those are, it's okay if I get them, it's okay if I don't. And that's how I feel about it overall. But anyways, you guys tell me what you guys think. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, always remember, stay ascended.